Picture this. Four friends eager to escape the chaos of city life decide to embark on a camping trip deep in the woods. Their destination? A remote, picturesque lake surrounded by dense, towering trees. Little did they know, their peaceful getaway was about to turn into a nightmare. Friend 1. Wow, guys, look at this place. It's beautiful. Friend 2. I can't believe we have it all to ourselves. This is going to be amazing. The first night passed uneventfully. Laughter echoed through the trees as they shared ghost stories around the crackling campfire, the smell of roasted marshmallows filling the air. But as the second night fell, an unsettling atmosphere began to creep in. Lisa. Hey guys, does anyone else feel like we're being watched? Friend 3. Come on, Lisa. Don't let those ghost stories get to you. It's just us out here. But Lisa's words planted a seed of unease that grew as the night wore on. Strange rustling sounds emanated from the surrounding forest, always just out of sight. Friend 4. There it is again. Did you hear that? Friend 2. It's probably just an animal. Here, I'll check. Every time they shone their flashlights into the darkness, they found nothing. Just shadows and trees. But the feeling of being observed never faded. As they prepared for bed, exhausted from the day's activities and the growing tension, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. Lisa screams, "Oh my God, look, there by the trees!" All eyes turned to where Lisa was pointing. There at the edge of the forest, a pair of glowing eyes reflected the dying firelight. Inhuman, unblinking, watching. Friend 1. What is that? Someone get a light on it. Frantic rustling, multiple flashlight clicks. But as suddenly as they appeared, the eyes vanished, leaving the group huddled together, hearts pounding, sleep now a distant memory. Friend 3. We need to get out of here. First thing in the morning, we're leaving. The night stretched on endlessly, every sound amplified by their fear. When dawn finally broke, they emerged from their tents, haggard and on edge. Friend 4. Guys, you need to see this. Around their campsite, strange footprints marred the soft earth. Too large for any animal they knew, yet not quite human. The implication sent a chill down their spines. Friend 2. Let's go. Now! They packed up in record time, the feeling of being watched growing stronger with each passing moment. As they piled into their car and sped away, they couldn't shake the sensation of eyes boring into them from the trees lining the road. Their escape from the woods didn't end their ordeal. For weeks after, each of them would wake in the night, swearing they could see a pair of glowing eyes watching them from the darkest corners of their rooms. The silent watcher had followed them home, a chilling reminder that some things in this world are better left undisturbed. So the next time you're in the woods and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, remember, just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. Watching, waiting, in the silence of the forest. Sarah and Michael were an adventurous couple, always seeking new thrills in the great outdoors. Their latest expedition led them to a hidden gem, an abandoned campsite nestled near a serene lake, complete with an old dilapidated cabin. The perfect spot for a peaceful getaway, or so they thought. Sarah. Michael, look at this place. It's beautiful. Michael. And so quiet. I can't believe we have it all to ourselves. As night fell, the couple settled into their tent, the gentle lapping of the lake lulling them to sleep. But their peaceful slumber was about to be shattered. In the dead of night, Sarah's eyes snapped open. A sound had pierced the silence, a sound that sent chills down her spine. Faint sound of a child crying in the distance. Sarah, whispering, Michael, wake up. Do you hear that? Michael, groggy. Hear what? Sarah. Listen, it sounds like a child crying. Child's cry becomes clearer, more distressed. Michael, now alert. That's impossible. We're miles from anywhere. But there was no denying it. The heart-wrenching sobs of a young child echoed through the night air, seeming to come from the direction of the old cabin. Sarah. We have to do something. What if a child is lost out there? Michael. Okay, let's check it out. But stay close. Sound of flashlights clicking on, footsteps on leaves. Armed with flashlights, Sarah and Michael ventured out into the darkness. The crying grew louder as they approached the cabin, its broken windows like hollow eyes staring back at them. Sarah, calling out, "Hello, is anyone there? We're here to help." But there was no response, just the continuous, heart-rending sobs, creaking of old wood as they climb onto the cabin's porch. Michael, the doors open, rusty hinges creaking. As they pushed open the door, the crying abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was almost more unnerving than the sobs had been. Sarah now whispered, "Hello, little one, are you in here?" Their flashlights swept across the empty room, revealing nothing but dust, cobwebs, and decay. No sign of a child, no sign of anyone. "Michael, Sarah, look, on the door." Sound of paper rustling. Pinned to the inside of the door was a yellowed newspaper clipping. Michael's hands shook as he read the faded print. Michael, reading. "Local child still missing after 3-week search. 5-year-old Tommy Williams disappeared from family camping trip. Parents plead for information." Sarah gasps, "The date." "Michael, this is from 30 years ago. Sudden gust of wind, door slams shut." Both scream. A wave of coldness washed over them, along with an overwhelming sense of sorrow and desperation. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very walls of the cabin were closing in on them. Sarah, "We need to get out of here, now!" Frantic footsteps, heavy breathing. They ran back to their tent, hearts pounding, the feeling of being watched, of being followed, pressing down on them. The rest of the night passed in tense silence, neither able to sleep, both straining to hear if the crying would return. Morning birds chirping. Michael, "First light, let's pack up and go." Sarah, "I've never felt so haunted. It's like that poor child's spirit is still here, still lost, still crying out for help." As they drove away, they couldn't shake the lingering sadness that clung to them. Later, when they spoke to locals about their experience, they learned the chilling truth. Local, "Oh, you camped out by old William's cabin? Brave souls you are. They say little Tommy's spirit still wanders those woods, crying out for his parents. Some nights, if you listen closely, you can hear him, still searching, still lost after all these years." Sarah and Michael never returned to those woods, but on quiet nights they sometimes find themselves startled awake, hearts racing, sure they've heard the distant cries of a lost child echoing in the darkness. Remember, not all cries for help come from the living, and some lost souls are still searching, long after the rest of the world has given up. John was an experienced solo camper, always seeking the thrill of solitude in nature's embrace. His latest adventure had led him deep into the heart of a sprawling national park, far from the well-trodden paths and crowded campsites. Sound of tent being set up, backpack being unzipped. John knew to himself, "Perfect. This spot couldn't be more secluded if I tried." As the sun dipped below the horizon, John settled into his tent, ready to lose himself in a good book before turning in for the night. Sound of pages turning, lantern clicking on. The warm glow of his lantern cast a comforting light throughout the small space. But as the night wore on, John began to notice something unsettling. John were muttering, "That's odd." Strange shadows danced on the walls of his tent. At first, John dismissed them as the natural play of light and shadow from the trees outside. But then, sound of wind picking up, tent material flapping slightly. The shadows moved in ways that didn't match the gentle swaying of the branches. They twisted and writhed, taking on shapes that seemed almost deliberate. John, nervous laugh. "Come on, John, get a grip. It's just your imagination." But even as he tried to reassure himself, a chill ran down his spine. The shadows seemed to be reaching for him, growing darker and more defined with each passing moment. And then John heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. Sound of heavy, raspy breathing, very close. John gasps, then whispers, "Who's there?" The breathing was right next to his ear, as if someone, or something, was lying beside him in the tent. But John was alone, or at least he was supposed to be. Breathing gets louder, more menacing. The shadows on the tent walls began to swirl and coalesce, forming shapes that defied explanation. Faces emerged from the darkness, twisted in silent screams, only to melt away and reform into grotesque, reaching hands. John, panicked whisper, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But no matter how much he tried to rationalize it, the terrifying show continued. John clutched his flashlight like a lifeline, his knuckles white with fear. Sleep was now a distant memory. Sound of John's rapid breathing, heartbeat audible. Hours crawled by, each minute an eternity of terror. John remained frozen, afraid that any movement might attract the attention of whatever presence was tormenting him. Soft chirping of early morning birds begins. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the tent fabric, the shadows retreated, the breathing faded, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Sound of tent zipper, footsteps on leaves. Exhausted and shaken, John stumbled out of his tent. The morning sun revealed a peaceful clearing, showing no signs of the night's horrors. John, relieved, sigh. Maybe it was just a nightmare. But as he circled his campsite, John's relief turned to ice in his veins. There in the soft earth around his tent were footprints that didn't match his own. John, whispering, "Oh God!" The footprints formed a perfect circle around his tent, as if something had been pacing, watching, waiting all night long. Sounds of frantic packing, tent being torn down. John packed up in record time, his hands shaking uncontrollably. As he hurried down the trail, the feeling of being watched pressed down on him, urging him to run faster, to escape the shadows that seemed to linger at the edge of his vision. Sound of rapid footsteps on a trail, heavy breathing. John made it back to civilization, but the experience haunted him. He never camped alone again, and to this day he sleeps with a light on, terrified of what might be lurking in the shadows. So the next time you're lying in your tent and the shadows seem to move in ways they shouldn't, ask yourself, is it just your imagination? Or is something watching you from the darkness, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Whisper, sleep tight. 4 friends, Alex, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, were on a hiking trip in the mountains, their backpacks heavy with supplies, their spirits high with adventure. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they realized they needed to find shelter for the night. Sound of footsteps on a rocky path, light wind. Alex, guys, we need to find a place to camp soon. It's getting dark. Sarah, wait, what's that up ahead? Through the trees, they spotted an old weathered cabin. Its windows were dark, its wood grayed with age. It stood silent, as if waiting for them. Mike, an abandoned cabin? That's convenient. Emily, and creepy. Are we sure about this? Despite their reservations, the promise of a roof over their heads was too tempting to pass up. They approached the cabin cautiously, creaking of old wooden steps. Alex, knocking on the door. Hello? Anyone here? Silence answered them. Alex pushed the door open, revealing a dusty interior bathed in the last rays of sunlight. Door creaking open. Sarah, looks like no one's been here for years. As they entered, their flashlights revealed strange symbols carved into the walls. Faded photographs hung crookedly, capturing the faces of past visitors, frozen in time. Mike, nervously, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Emily, don't be such a baby. It's just an old cabin. They settled in for the night, unrolling their sleeping bags on the creaky wooden floor. But as darkness fell, an unsettling atmosphere descended upon them. Alex, whispering, "Did you guys hear that?" Sarah, "Hear what?" Alex, "I thought I heard whispers." They all fell silent, straining their ears. And then, faint, indistinct whispers. Emily gasps, "I heard it too." Mike, "It's probably just the wind." Sound of footsteps overhead. Sarah, that's not the wind. The footsteps seemed to pace back and forth above them, but the cabin was only one story. There was no second floor. Sudden loud crash. All scream. Alex, what was that? They scrambled for their flashlights, hearts pounding. In the beam of light, they saw one of their backpacks had been thrown across the room. Mike, okay, that's it. I'm out of here. Sarah, we can't leave now. It's pitch black outside. As if in response to their fear, the whispers grew louder, the footsteps more frantic. The symbols on the walls seemed to writhe in the flickering flashlight beams. Emily, the photos! Look at the photos! The faded images had changed. The faces in them were now twisted in expressions of terror, their mouths open in silent screams. Sound of glass breaking. Alex, this place is alive. We need to get out, now. They grabbed what they could and burst out of the cabin, running blindly into the dark forest. Behind them, they could hear the cabin creaking and groaning, as if laughing at their retreat. Sound of frantic running, heavy breathing. They ran until their lungs burned, finally collapsing in a small clearing. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they looked at each other, pale and shaken. Sarah, What was that place? Mike, I don't know and I don't want to know. Let's just get out of these mountains. As they made their way back to civilization, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had narrowly escaped something truly sinister. The symbols from the walls seemed burned into their minds, and in quiet moments, they could still hear those ghostly whispers. Emily, guys, look at this. Emily pulled out her phone, showing them a photo she had managed to take inside the cabin. There, standing in the background, barely visible in the gloom, was a figure that hadn't been there when the photo was taken. Sound of phone dropping. Alex whispering, "We're never speaking of this again. Agreed?" All agreed. But some experiences can't be forgotten. And sometimes the things we try hardest to leave behind have a way of following us home. So the next time you're hiking in the mountains and come across an abandoned cabin, ask yourself, is it really abandoned? Or is something waiting inside, eager for new guests to entertain? The night was dark and stormy, rain pelting the windshield of Alex and Jamie's old sedan as they wound their way through a remote forest road. The couple was on their way home from a weekend getaway, the trees on either side of the road forming an impenetrable black wall in the gloom. Jamie, yawning, "How much further, Alex? I'm exhausted." Alex, "Another hour, maybe. This shortcut through the forest should save us some time." Sound of tires screeching. Jamie gasps, "Alex, look out!" Suddenly, illuminated in the headlights, stood a figure by the side of the road. A young woman drenched from the rain, her arm outstretched in a plea for help. Alex, breathing heavily, "Did you see that? There's someone out there." Jamie, "We can't just leave her here. Pull over." Sound of car pulling over, engine idling. Alex rolled down the window, rain spattering inside as he called out to the woman. "Alex, hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride?" The woman approached the car, her face pale and drawn, eyes wide with what looked like fear. Woman, voice trembling, "Please, I need to get home. Can you help me?" Jamie, "Of course, hop in the back. You must be freezing." Sound of car door opening and closing. As they pulled back onto the road, an uneasy silence filled the car. The woman sat rigidly in the back seat, her wet clothes dripping onto the upholstery. Alex, "So, where are we taking you?" Woman, softly, "Elm Street, the old Victorian house at the end." Jamie, turning to look at her, "That's on our way. What were you doing out here all alone?" But the woman didn't answer. She just stared out the window, occasionally glancing nervously over her shoulder as if expecting to see something following them. Alex, whispering to Jamie, "Something's not right. She seems terrified." Jamie whispering back, "I know, let's just get her home quickly." As they drove, the woman's anxiety seemed to grow. Her breathing became rapid, and she kept looking behind them with increasing frequency. Woman, urgently, "Please, can't you go any faster?" Alex, I'm going as fast as I can on these wet roads. We're almost there. Sound of the car accelerating. Finally, they turned onto Elm Street. At the end of the road stood an old Victorian house, its windows dark, paint peeling from years of neglect. Jamie, is this it? But there was no answer from the back seat. Alex, turning around. Miss, we're heat. Both. Gasps. The back seat was empty. There was no sign of the woman, no wet spot where she had been sitting. It was as if she had never been there at all. Jamie, Alex, where did she go? Did you see her get out? Alex, a voice shaking. No, I don't understand. She was just here. Sound of car doors opening, footsteps on wet pavement. Confused and more than a little frightened, Alex and Jamie got out of the car, looking around wildly for any sign of their vanished passenger. Jamie, hello? Miss? Are you here? Their calls were met with silence, broken only by the patter of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Sound of footsteps approaching. Old man, you folks looking for someone? Alex, startled. Oh, yes, we gave a ride to a young woman. She said she lived in that house there, but she disappeared from our car. Old man, sighs heavily. Let me guess, pale dark hair, looked scared out of her wits? Jamie, yes, that's her. Do you know her? Old man, I'm afraid you're not the first to have this experience. That young woman, she died years ago. Terrible accident on the forest road. They say her spirit still tries to make it home, hitching rides with unsuspecting drivers. Alex disbelieving. But that's impossible. She was in our car. We spoke to her. Old man, the boundary between the living and the dead isn't always as clear as we'd like to think, especially not in these parts. Alex and Jamie looked at each other, a chill running down their spines that had nothing to do with the cold rain. Jamie whispering, Alex, let's go. Now! Sound of car engine starting, tires squealing. As they drove away, both Alex and Jamie couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching them from the shadows of the old Victorian house. They drove in silence, the weight of their supernatural encounter hanging heavy between them. Alex, Jamie, did we really just give a ride to a... Jamie, don't say it. Please, just don't say it. From that night on, Alex and Jamie always took the long way home, avoiding that stretch of forest road. But on stormy nights, they sometimes find themselves glancing nervously at their rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pale face staring back at them from the back seat. Remember, not all those who wander are lost, and sometimes those who are lost are not of this world. Sound of a car passing by, then silence.